Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In this week's video, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the City of Vancouver's housing supply concerns and targets right now. We're also going to look at housing supply nationally. If you watched my video from last week, you'll see that housing supply has increased in the short term, but we're going to take a bit more of a long-term look and how that's going to affect Vancouver real estate prices going forward. Real quick before we get started, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you on your real estate journey. When I'm not making videos like this, I'm helping clients buy and sell real estate all across the Lower Mainland and the Fraser Valley. So if that sounds interesting to you, something you may want to chat about with me, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future weekly video. All right, so we're going to hop right into this. We're going to start by looking at the City of Vancouver itself, what's happening with housing supply and construction. And we're going to focus, like I said, on future, what's going to happen in the mid and the longer term. If you watched last week's video, it's a good synopsis of what's happening with housing supply in today's current market. But we'll start with the City of Vancouver. About 6 months ago, the province put targets on several municipalities. At the time, they started with 10 cities. I believe that list is now up to 30 or 40 cities that now have housing supply targets. And how it works is those cities have to report every 6 months, even though they are annual targets. They have to report to the province and publicly every 6 months where they are at for housing completions. So we're at the 6-month mark for the City of Vancouver, and the way that they are determining housing completions is basically if they have been given a final occupancy certificate, if the unit has made its final check at the city. And so of an annual target of 5,200 housing units annually, in the first 6 months, the City of Vancouver completed 1,600 units. So they did not hit, they're not on pace to hit their annual target. Now, I'm not going to come on here and say, oh my God, this is a massive deal. You know, it's the first 6 months of a program. And the reality is that housing completions, they're not all going to have or happen evenly, you know, over a given month. There's going to be chunks of completions that might happen towards the end, chunks that might happen early on. So not on pace to hit the annual target. However, in terms of how many units they have in the pipeline, the City of Vancouver is coming out and saying we have enough units in the pipeline to hit our 5-year target. And so this is where we're going to dig in a little bit in terms of what is this housing supply pipeline in Vancouver. And basically it consists of projects that are already under construction. And so those units, we generally know that those are going to complete, those are going to enter the market. I believe there's about 8,000 units that are under construction in the City of Vancouver. On the flip side, they'll have, you know, units that are approved. They've been given development permits to the developers, but they have not taken off the ground. And that's the larger chunk. There's 14,000 units that are approved but not under construction. And I think, you know, these are the units that are most at risk of not coming to fruition, not in their entirety, but a large chunk of these are, you know, they're not ever going to get constructed, at least not in the mid and even the longer term for a lot of these units. One of the reasons that we can draw this conclusion is if we look at what's happening with the construction industry here in Vancouver over the course of the last year and a half, we've seen a number of foreclosures on construction projects that haven't gotten off the ground. The latest one, a rental building in East Vancouver called the Sophia, a 9-story in foreclosure proceedings. I believe it actually just sold in foreclosure. But this is not a one-off theme. We've talked about a developer that had a bunch of projects in the Cambie corridor that are in foreclosure stage now, and these processes take time. So basically, you know, with these sites that aren't getting constructed, you know, will they get constructed at some point? Very likely, yes. But what happens with foreclosure proceedings is they take time. And time is a big enemy of housing supply here in the city, nationally as well, which we'll talk about in a sec. But time is a big enemy. So anytime you're adding a year or 2 years to an already lengthy development cycle, when we talk about these housing targets we're trying to hit over a 5-year period, you know, more and more developers are just I'd like to say feeling the pinch, but it's stronger than that. They're having massive struggles getting projects off the ground, and this is going to slow this whole housing supply scenario in Vancouver, in surrounding cities. Is generally developers that maybe aren't as well capitalized. They purchased these properties at peak prices, 2017, 2018, when land value was incredibly high. In the Cambie corridor, people were paying $5-6 million for a single family home because of the development potential of that property, and those never came to fruition. So circling this back to the Vancouver housing supply targets and all of these units that are sitting in the pipeline, much of that pipeline is not going to get developed out, or it's going to take an extremely long period of time. I think what we are going to see now, in the Vancouver construction market, we're going to see more foreclosures. There are larger developers that are also having struggles. We're going to hear more about that in the next 6 to 8 months. And I think we're going to see a bit of a consolidation in this sector. You're going to have the large developers, ginormous developers, essentially, taking over the lion's share of the projects, the ones that have been building for 20, 30 years, very well capitalized. You're no longer going to find, that smaller, maybe new to that product type, not new to the development game, but say new to high-rise construction. They're going to take on a project. You're not going to see that happen anymore. The risk is just too high. The reward is not there. There are too many question marks. And I think if we see this consolidation in the construction space with these developers, there can be some efficiencies with, economies of scale and having access to the labor and the construction teams, which we will also talk about in a second. But we're in a transitory phase, essentially, when it comes to development in Vancouver in terms of who's going to be developing these projects, who can actually take it on. And transition takes time. And so for me, when we look at these housing targets amongst all of the cities, it's going to be very difficult to reach for cities that don't already have units under construction. Really, units under construction is what is going to get us towards those targets. So the cities that have a large chunk, for example, Burnaby, that are already under construction, those ones are going to be okay towards targets. But the ones that are sitting in approval stage, very likely to not hit their targets moving forward. So we talked a little bit locally about what's happening on the construction front. Let's talk about federally housing supply. And the federal government, they released their budget where they're looking to supply 3.8 million homes by 2031. A very lofty and an insane kind of number that's thrown out there in terms of trying to hit this amount of completions. What I just talked about on the Vancouver on a smaller scale, this is not just a Vancouver story. This is happening right across the country. Last year, 2023, we completed about 240,000 homes. So if we look at that 3.8 million number, really the goal is almost 500,000 homes a year. And again, we did 240,000 last year. We had the most amount of construction workers we've ever had, 650,000 construction workers. So productivity is extremely low for the amount of workers that we have. And the workers that we do have, the construction workers, they are traveling to other provinces wherever the work is. There's a lot of people that are going to Alberta and doing work over there while developers pull back on projects that are happening in Vancouver. So we have this lofty number, a number that is, essentially impossible to hit, even if we were to max out and do our best in terms of a productivity standpoint. The CMHC looked at it and they said, if we were as productive as we could possibly be, we could construct 400,000 homes a year, but that's still not enough to get there. We're not going to be that productive. And from an overall supply perspective, these stalled projects that we're talking about, a lot of it comes down to Vancouver and Toronto. The largest impact on Canadian real estate based on volume of units and where most immigration is occurring is in Ontario. It's in BC, Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, and in Ontario there's a lot of talk about developers scaling back, not moving forward on projects. So that pie in the sky number, the 3.8 million, it's not going to happen even in our best days, even if we, do everything correctly moving forward. And this is what happens, when you're so far behind. It's almost impossible. It is impossible to reach that goal. It's nice to have the goal, but on a long-term scale, we're not going to be able to hit what they believe is the number, the 3.8 million, that's going to bring affordability back to the country. So circling this all back to the current market, the reason I wanted to go into a bit of a deep dive more on a midterm and a longer term scale of what's happening with housing supply is if you go to your real estate agent and you ask them, you say, hey, what's going on with housing supply in the country or in Vancouver? You can see how it's a very multifaceted answer. If you're asking me for immediacy and you're looking, for example, for condos, I would say there's a lot of supply out there. There's a lot to choose from. We have supply levels we haven't seen since 2020 summer. So we're actually trending, and we're trending for more active inventory as well. So in that regard, yes, there is a lot of inventory. But if you're looking at things from a mid-range or a long range, it's a very different story. Now, through this channel, I need to be very general. So I try with each of my videos I try that everyone will have one thing that they can take away from each of my videos, knowing that the viewer base, that you have a different goal. You may be a seller, you may be a buyer, you may not be buying or selling, you may be a tenant. Whatever your situation, I want you to come away with one thing, at least one thing from my video that you can take away, you learn from it, you share with someone else, and the chain continues. But if you're talking one-on-one with your realtor, when I'm talking one-on-one, it's a very intricate question. We'll have some clients that they don't care about the long-term supply. They're just trying to purchase their first home, and they plan to live there for 20 or 30 years. Yet I have clients that are purely looking for investment, and so they're not so into what's happening in the short term right now. They're more concerned with what's going to happen in the mid and the long term. So when talking about housing supply, I think it's very important to look at today's market, of course, when you're making a decision today, but putting on your future glasses and thinking, what's going to happen moving forward. Those City of Vancouver targets that, again, we're not on track to meet, and we have a whole bunch of units that are sitting in an approval stage that may never get built. 60% of those units need to be either studio or one bedrooms as well. So these targets now that are placed on the cities, they're based on unit types as well. And 72% of them need to be rentals. And if you watch my channel for a bit, you know that I've done several videos on how the future of housing in our city in Metro Vancouver are going to be rentals, are going to be leaseholds. So that value of a freehold property is only going to continue to grow moving forward. So there you have it, guys. I hope you learned something in this video. If you did, hit the like button, because what that does is it takes the video and it sends it out to more people so they can also learn from it. And if you enjoy this weekly real estate content, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss next week's video. And lastly, again, if you're in the Vancouver area or the Fraser Valley, you wanted to talk with me one-on-one about your real estate situation, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below, or just send me a text, give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever's easiest for you. I'd love to chat with you, but I want to thank you again for taking time out of your day to watch this video, and I look forward to seeing you next week.